Welcome to the Ditch the Struggle podcast. I'm your host, Alana Rosso. I'm a graphic designer turned career and success coach who knew I could do better, but kept falling short of where I wanted to go. But after years of exploring personal and career development, business, money mindset, and energy work, I'm here to tell you that yes, you can move from stuck and defeated to empowered and confident. Ready to dive in? Awesome. Together, let's ditch the struggle. Hi, everyone. Welcome back. This episode today will be a bit of a career check-in, a little bit of perspective, and I'm going to share part of an article that I read a few years ago that had a profound effect on me. Every time I revisit it, I get something else out of it, and it's an amazing reminder of what our priorities should be as we're moving through our career. But let me back up for a second, because I'm going to be talking about the advertising industry. And full disclosure, I work in advertising. In that, I use my skills and my talents and my design abilities to promote advertised products. You could say this podcast is an advertisement for my services. Advertising is a part of our lives. Selling is a part of our lives. But the advertising industry, the advertising agency world, this is something very different. And I made a decision when I was early on going to college. I went to the Ontario College of Art and Design, that advertising was not going to be the way that I went, or like the lane that I would focus in on. And that was one of the specialties I could do when I was in college. I talk about this actually in episode 50. I really recommend going back to that episode if you want to hear a little bit about how I came to be where I am. Because those college years had a huge, profound effect on how I saw everything. And that's also where my panic attacks really started. So go back to episode 50, but I will touch on kind of that decision I made not to go into advertising. I was taking some advertising classes. I was doing the thing, coming up with the ideas. And there was something about those classes that I just hated. It felt, and I'm going to use this word because it's appropriate here, it felt toxic. It felt so fake, and the people in those classes felt so fake. It just felt like this world that I did not want to be a part of. And it was hard for me to actually say, no, I don't want to go into advertising, because it was kind of considered the glamorous path to take at school. Like all the cool kids were doing it. The smart kids were doing it. Probably the kids that were going to make money, right? So they were going to go into agencies and actually make a decent living. You know, be able to pay the rent and things like that, which I barely could do when I graduated and took my first job for $22,000 a year in the music industry. So the advertising people seemed to have it all figured out. They were going to be cool. They were cool. They were just going to get cooler. They were going to make more money. They had these brilliant ideas. There was just this vibe. And I started to really not like the vibe. And it is interesting having now, that's a long time ago, seeing the friends I actually have no friends from college except for one. I think this is very interesting. I didn't make any friends in my college experience that have lasted. All of my best friends are still from high school. So I find this really interesting. College was just it was not the time or the phase of my life to make a lot of friendships and secure those. It's just very transient, just like people coming in and out, classes and craziness. But the people that kind of went on to do advertising, they were a certain kind of person. And let's just put it this way. The highly sensitive empaths of the world are not running big ad agencies, because those people aren't really seeking power. They also aren't seeking to manipulate on a full-time basis, because that's what advertising is in many ways. You can be advertising something amazing. I'm not saying that. You can be behind an amazing product or something that really helps people. But it is a lot of smoke and mirrors. It's a lot of manipulation. It's kind of like going into PR in a way. And yeah, I've seen a lot of these people I went to school with, open agencies. They're not people that I, really have in my orbit. And I did freelance for many advertising agencies. It was just like a lot of my early career was freelancing, bopping around all these different agencies. I saw how they worked. And the workload was insane, and it was expected, and it was part of the culture. So every industry has culture. And I recently interviewed a lawyer, Michelle, on my podcast, and she talks about the crazy overnight culture too, like working literally all night just as to get through the trials that they had to do. So certain industries have culture attached to them. And I also got to see from a different perspective because my sister was older. She is older than me, and she went into account management in advertising, and she spent a lot of her career in advertising. So her story is not mine to tell, but I will say that just watching her go through the madness and the insanity, I think it was the Mercedes account that really kind of broke her. Watching that happen and just the fury, the insanity of it, the workaholic culture, the nonstop hustle, like already in my early 20s and like at the beginning of my career, I was thinking that this is not for me. But yet I ended up kind of in it. And I also worked at design agencies. So it's a little bit different. Working in an ad agency is definitely, to me, the height of the insanity. Then the second tier down would be a design agency because you're still doing advertising, but often the focus is mainly on production of, like, let's say a package, rolling out specific designs. And there is the advertising component, but it's just a little bit different. You're not necessarily pitching to have the biggest, newest, Audi campaign coming out. So it's different as opposed to just being, think Mad Men. If you watched Mad Men, which was really at the height of the advertising industry, there was the cool factor. It was like exciting. And there is something to be said about working late with a bunch of people, eating pizza and just kind of making it through because you have a deadline, because there's the camaraderie, there's the connection, that you're all in this together. There's something so appealing about that. And there's also something that really happens when you are exhausted and you've been burning the candle at both ends. Sometimes you can get brilliant ideas. It's not all just trash that comes out when you're kind of delirious. You can have this spark of genius, and I don't know what happens. I don't know how it happens, where these beams of ideas come from. From the trash pile, there can be this golden nugget of an idea, and there's something like kind of magical about that experience. But I will say that I decided to lean away from advertising as a culture and as an industry. Like I didn't want to be an art director in an ad agency. That just started to become my nightmare. So I started leaning away from that very early on and moved my career in different directions. But as I said, I worked at a whole bunch of different ad agencies. I can't say I liked any of them. They were not enjoyable. Everyone felt fake. You had to promote products that you maybe didn't care about. And the hours were insane. And there was a little bit of that superiority complex happening. And I'm just like being very blunt today. I guess this is going into hammer time territory. There was just that vibe that was still from college of these people are better than everybody else and we're doing a cooler job than everybody else. And I was like, I don't know. You're selling like paper for like Staples or whatever the hell it was. I don't know. But as I said, I still obviously work in design. So I am in the advertising world of sorts, but it's very different in that I really get to pick and choose my clients, and I make sure that I'm like really behind the company and in alignment as much as possible. I was internally stressed and out of alignment at different points, working in different agencies, promoting products that I just wasn't on board with and didn't care about. Let's put it that way. And I think every designer does it at some point, so maybe this helps normalize it. But let's get to the article. So this article, I think, popped up on LinkedIn quite a few years ago for me, maybe about 5 years ago. And it's been circulating for many years because, as I said, it's been written in 2012. So it was actually published March 11th, 2012. And the article is called A Short Lesson in Perspective. And it is by someone named Linds Redding. And he was a Saatchi & Saatchi and BBDO art director. And he died in 2012 at the age of 52. And he had a blog and chronicled a lot of his life stories. And this one has just made its way around the design world multiple times. It just keeps coming back because it's so good. and the message is timeless. He died of cancer, and I believe he died of esophageal cancer. And maybe that's why I saw the article, or that I took note of it in LinkedIn, because I think there was a reference to that, and that is the same cancer that my dad died of. That is not an easy one to go through. No cancer is, but some are more difficult in terms of pain management, and that's not an easy one. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to read a few of the paragraphs from it so that you get a gist of it, because it's quite long. And then I'm going to put the link to the full article in the show notes. And I highly encourage you to read the whole thing. Whether you've worked in advertising, whether you're a creative person, it actually doesn't matter, because in this day and age of everyone now still working like crazy, we all calmed down a little bit for a few years in the pandemonium, and then it's like we've fully swung back the other way for most people. And I admit I work a lot, but I will say the difference now with how I work and what I would have done 10, 15, 20 years ago is that I'm trying to work on things that I actually care about and are meaningful and are fulfilling. I had read somewhere that apparently 70% of Americans think they have a bullshit job. So, and I have mentioned this before because I think it's such an interesting stat. If you're working on something that you truly don't care about, how is that going to be in any way fulfilling? How is your career going to feel to you? And we do need to take a hard look on what we're doing and make changes when necessary. Okay, so let's dive into this article. So again, this is a short lesson in perspective by Linds Redding. Many years ago, when I first started to work in the advertising industry, we used to have this thing called the overnight test. It worked like this. My creative partner, Lawrence, and I would spend the day covering A2 sheets torn from layout pads with ideas for whatever project we were currently engaged on. An ad for a new gas oven, tennis racket, or whatever. Scribbled headlines, bad puns, stickmen drawings crudely rendered in fat black magic marker. It was a kind of brain dump, I suppose. Everything that tumbled out of our heads and mouths were committed to paper. Anything completely ridiculous, irrelevant, or otherwise unworkable was filtered out as we worked, and by beer o'clock there would be an impressive avalanche of screwed up paper filling the corner of the room where a comically undersized waste bin resided. Pretty soon, the overnight test became the over-lunch test. Then before we knew it, we were eating pot noodles at our desk and taking it in turns to go home and see our kids before they went to bed. As fast as we could pin an idea to the wall, some red-faced account manager in a bad suit would run away with it. Where we used to rely on taking a break and stretching our eyes to allow us to see the wood from the trees, we now fell back on experience and gut feel. It worked most of the time, but nobody is infallible. Some howlers and growlers definitely made it through, and generally, standards plummeted. The trick to being truly creative, I've always maintained, is to be completely unself-conscious, to resist the urge to self-censor, to not give a shit what anyone thinks. That's why children are so good at it, and why people with Volkswagens and mortgages, personal equity plans, and matching Louis Vuitton luggage are not. I have now enjoyed the better part of 6 months of enforced detachment from this old reality. When you're used to turning on a sixpence, shooting from the hip, dancing on a pinhead, the view back down from 6 months is quite giddying and sobering. My old life looks and feels very different from the outside. And here's the thing. It turns out I didn't actually like my old life nearly as much as I thought I did. I know this now because I occasionally catch up with my old colleagues and workmates. They fall over each other to enthusiastically show me the latest project they're working on, ask my opinion, proudly show off their technical prowess, which is not inconsiderable. I find myself glazing over, but politely listen as they brag about who's had the least sleep and the most takeaway food. I haven't seen my wife since January. I can't feel my legs anymore, and I think I have scurvy, but another 3 weeks and we'll be done. It's got to be done by then. The client's going to go on holiday. What do I think? What do I think? I think you're all fucking mad, deranged, so disengaged from reality it's not even funny. It's a fucking TV commercial. Nobody gives a shit. This has come as quite a shock, I can tell you. I think I've come to the conclusion that the whole thing was a bit of a con, a scam, an elaborate hoax. So where does this leave the artists and artisans? Well, up a watercolor of shit creek without a paintbrush. That one thing that we prize and value above all else, the idea, turns out to be just another plastic gizmo or widget to be touted and traded. And to add insult to injury, we now have to create them not in our own time, but according to the quota and the production schedule. We need 6 concepts to show the client first thing in the morning. He's going on holiday. Don't waste too much time on them, though. It's only a meeting, you know. He's only going to pay for one, so they don't all have to be good. Just knock something up. You know the drill. Oh, and one more thing. His favorite color is green. Radio, see you in the morning, then I'm off to the Groucho Club. Have you ever tried to have an idea, any idea at all, with a gun to your head? This is a daily reality for the creative drone. And when he's done, sometime in the wee small hours, he then has to face his 2 harshest critics, himself and everyone else. Sorry, client couldn't make the meeting. I faxed her layouts to him at his squash club. He quite liked the green one. Apart from the typeface, the words, the picture, and the idea. Oh, and could the logo be bigger? Hope it wasn't a late night. Thank God for computers, right? Okay, radio, I'm off to lunch. Countless late nights and weekends, holidays, birthdays, school recitals, and anniversary dinners were willingly sacrificed at the altar of some intangible but infinitely worthy higher cause. It would all be worth it in the long run. This was the con. Convincing myself that there was nowhere I'd rather be was just a coping mechanism. I can see that now. It wasn't really important, or of any consequence at all, really. How could it be? We were just shifting product, our product and the clients, just meeting the quota. Feeding the beast, as I called it on my more cynical days. So was it worth it? Well, of course not. It turns out it was just advertising. There was no higher calling, no ultimate prize, just a lot of faded, yellowing newsprint, and old video cassettes in an obsolete format I can't even play anymore, even if I was interested. Oh yes, and a lot of framed certificates, and little gold statues, a shitload of empty Prozac boxes, wine bottles, a lot of gray hair, and a tumor of indeterminate dimensions. It sounds like I'm feeling sorry for myself again, and I'm not. It was fun for quite a lot of the time. I was pretty good at it. I met a lot of funny, talented, and clever people. Got to become an overnight expert in everything from shower heads to sheen dip. Got to scratch my creative itch on a daily basis and earned enough money to raise the family which I love, and even see them occasionally. But what I didn't do with the benefit of perspective is anything of lasting importance. At least creatively speaking. Economically, I probably helped shift some merchandise, enhanced a few companies' bottom lines, helped make 1 or 2 wealthy men a bit wealthier than they were already. As a life, it all seemed like such a good idea at the time, but I'm not really sure it passes the overnight test. Pity. Oh, and if you're reading this while sitting in some darkened studio or edit suite, agonizing over whether housewife A should pick up the soap powder with her left hand or her right hand, do yourself a favor, power down, lock up, and go home and kiss your wife and kids. And so a short lesson in perspective, I believe this article definitely is. Every time I read it, I am reminded to get back and connect to my priorities, what's important, and to shut that computer down at the end of the day, not go back to it. It's like sometimes we're just called to just do more and more and more, to go back and back and back. And I'm also really grateful that I left the advertising industry. I would never regret that decision. Probably one of the best decisions I made in my entire life, actually, because I already chose a crazy industry. I chose a job where you do have to come up with ideas on demand, and it is like having a gun to your head, and you have to execute. But had I stayed in that specific industry, I can't even imagine what would have happened. I can't even fathom how many panic attacks I would have had, how many anxiety attacks I would have had, and how much more my health would have suffered. And you don't have to be in advertising, any kind of job or work where you're giving 10,000%. And at the end of the day, maybe you're just helping people buy more laundry detergent or whatever it is that's not that important objectively. Time to think on that, reflect on that. And yeah. Oh, and one other thing. If you do have a crazy day job, make sure that it leaves you time and energy to do those small things that you love and that you don't trash all of those things that are meaningful to you, because it's bad enough that a job can sometimes suck away so much of your time and energy. You want to make sure that, you get to see those kids at night. You get to do the things that are meaningful to you. And check in with that perspective, guys. Take care. Thank you for joining me today on Ditch the Struggle. You showing up here means so, so much to me. To dig deeper into the topics discussed today and to learn about my work, visit alanarosa.com. And don't forget to download your free resources while you're there. And if this episode resonated with you, please share with others who also want to ditch the struggle. Go ahead and subscribe to the podcast, leave a rating and a review, and let me know what you'd like to see more of on this podcast. And before I go, I want to leave you with my 3 favorite ways to ditch the struggle. Be your own best advocate, take baby steps for the win, and forget about a linear career path. It's overrated and you are doing just fine. See you next time.